Layla Al-Farouk's morning began like any other. The sun had barely kissed the golden sandstone rooftops of her family's ancestral home in Amman, Jordan, when she stepped into her courtyard, inhaling the scent of jasmine mingling with the faint aroma of freshly baked khoubs. Her life was not extravagant, but it was comfortable, a careful balance between tradition and the modest comforts afforded by her father's modest inheritance. Layla loved her home, the memories stitched into every corner, the laughter of her younger brother Omar echoing through the hallways, and the comforting presence of her mother Amina. But peace, she would soon learn, has a fragile heartbeat. Layla's day was set to begin with the usual errands, the market for fresh vegetables, a brief visit to the library to gather research for her small online boutique, and the weekly gathering with friends at her favorite cafe. She hadn't planned to meet anyone remarkable, certainly not someone who could change her life forever. That someone came in the form of Idris al-Mansour, a millionaire whose reputation preceded him like the whisper of a storm. He was the kind of man who turned heads without effort, tall, impeccably dressed, a predatory glint in his eyes that some mistook for charm. His wealth was legendary, spanning investments from Dubai to Paris, yachts to private jets, and real estate that made even seasoned businessmen tremble. Layla first saw him as he drove past her neighborhood in a sleek black sports car, the engine growling like a predator. Her heart skipped, not out of fear, but out of disbelief. It wasn't every day a man of Idris's status appeared in her quiet, narrow street, but fate has a way of crossing paths in the most inconvenient ways. The encounter happened because of a minor accident, or so it seemed. Idris's car had misjudged the narrowness of the street, and in an attempt to avoid a delivery truck, it clipped the corner of Layla's gate. A shudder went through the metal, and the gate groaned ominously. Layla, who had been watering the jasmine, dropped the watering can, her heart pounding. Idris stepped out, perfectly composed despite the chaos. I'm so terribly sorry," he said, his voice smooth as silk, though there was a flicker of amusement in his eyes. You're the owner of that car?" Layla asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and indignation. She had seen the headlines about his exploits in luxury magazines. He didn't belong here, among these modest homes. "I am," Idris said with a faint smile, stepping closer. "And I see I've already made a dramatic entrance." Layla's pulse quickened. "You've damaged my gate. My home is private property. You need to—" "Of course," Idris interrupted, raising his hands in a mock gesture of surrender. "I will repair it. But perhaps we can discuss this over coffee?" Layla blinked. Coffee? As if the destruction of her gate was merely a casual inconvenience. She wanted to refuse, wanted to push him out, but something in his presence, the sheer confidence, the undeniable magnetism, made her hesitate. It was infuriating. I don't think that's necessary," she managed to say. "Perhaps not," Idris conceded with a shrug, "but I insist on making amends. Consider it a courtesy to an unfortunate neighbor." Reluctantly, Layla allowed him inside the gate. She showed him the damage, her annoyance tempered by curiosity. He examined it with a casual, almost disdainful air, tapping the bent metal with a manicured finger. "This is easily fixable," he murmured. Then, to her surprise, he added, "But such a beautiful home deserves more than mere repairs." Layla frowned. "What do you mean?" Idris's smile widened, a glimmer of something unreadable in his eyes. "I mean, a home like this should reflect its owner. It deserves care, elegance, attention. Perhaps a renovation. I can provide recommendations. I have connections." Layla's frown deepened. She didn't need him, she didn't want him, and yet there was a weight in his gaze, a persuasive power that made her stomach twist in unease. Before she could respond, her mother appeared in the doorway, her presence commanding yet warm. "Layla, what is happening here?" she asked. "This man," Layla started, he damaged the gate. He wants to help?" Amina's eyes narrowed. "Is that so? And who might you be, sir?" "Idris al-Mansour," he said smoothly. I am deeply sorry for the inconvenience. I only wish to make amends. Her mother's gaze flicked to the bent gate, then back to Idris. We are not accustomed to your kind of generosity, she said carefully. Repairs will suffice. Idris inclined his head. Of course, repairs. But perhaps one day you might consider my offer. No pressure, a neighborly suggestion. With that, he left, though the rumble of his car engine lingered in Layla's ears long after he had gone. That day, Layla couldn't shake the encounter. There was something unsettling about Idris, something dangerous beneath the polished surface. And yet, she felt drawn to him, despite herself. She didn't know it yet, but this brief meeting would ignite a chain of events that would threaten everything she had built. Her home, her family, her sense of security. The first seed of destruction had been planted, and it would grow faster than she could imagine. Layla had barely slept that night. Every creak of the wooden beams in her home sounded louder than usual, as though the house itself shared her unease. She tried to focus on her boutique's online orders, the familiar rhythms of her life, but her thoughts kept returning to Idris al-Mansur. That man, the millionaire who had intruded upon her quiet life, had left a residue of unease in his wake, like an uninvited shadow stretching across the sunlit walls of her home. The next morning brought no relief. As Layla stepped into the courtyard to water the jasmine, she noticed a sleek black car parked conspicuously across the street. Her pulse quickened. She didn't need to see the driver to know who it was. And there he was, Idris al-Mansur, standing by his car, leaning casually against the hood, surveying the street with an air of ownership. Layla felt a mix of anger and apprehension. Why is he here? She muttered, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. She hadn't called him. She hadn't invited him. Yet here he was, intruding again into the sanctuary of her home. She considered retreating inside, but curiosity, or perhaps the inexplicable pull that had unnerved her the day before, made her step forward. Good morning, Layla, Idris said, his voice smooth, almost too casual, as if greeting an old friend. I thought I'd check on the repairs, make sure the gate is safe. You don't just check, Layla snapped, her hands clenched at her sides. You trespass. This is my home. I will not have you lurking around here like some predator. Idris raised an eyebrow, amused rather than offended. Predator, he repeated. I assure you, my intentions are perfectly benign. Benign? Layla's voice rose. You're intimidating everyone in this street. You're not like the people we usually see. You're dangerous, and you don't even care. Idris's eyes flickered, briefly, almost imperceptibly, like a storm behind calm waters. Dangerous? He repeated, quieter this time, as if savoring the word. Layla, I am not here to harm you. I only wish to help. Help? Layla echoed bitterly. You destroyed my gate. You think that's help? And what's tea next? Are you planning to destroy the rest of my home just for fun? Idris's smile was a blade hidden in silk. Sometimes destruction is the first step to improvement, he said cryptically, tapping the car roof. You will see. Layla didn't know what to make of him, and she certainly didn't have time to parse riddles. Before she could respond, a sudden noise shattered the air, a grinding, tearing sound from the street. Her heart leaped into her throat. Idris's car had moved, accelerated, but it wasn't just driving, it clipped the corner of her stone fountain, sending fragments of carved marble skittering across the courtyard like frightened birds. Water spilled in a small, hissing torrent, washing over the edges of her carefully arranged flower beds. Layla screamed, rushing forward, but Idris remained unnervingly calm. I'm terribly sorry, he said, stepping out of the car. It appears the fountain was in the wrong place. In the wrong place? Layla shouted. My fountain hasn't moved in 50 years. It's part of my family's history. Idris's smile never wavered. History is precious, he said, but sometimes history must make way for progress. Layla's mother, Amina, came running. Her face went pale at the sight of the wreckage. Layla! Oh God, the fountain! She cried. Her hands flew to her mouth in disbelief. This This is madness. It's an accident, Idris said smoothly. No harm done, really. I will have everything repaired, and perhaps improved. A home like yours deserves perfection, don't you think? Layla's fists clenched. I don't want your perfection. I want my home. Idris's calm demeanor made her blood boil. He seemed untouchable, above anger, above consequences. He was a force of nature, indifferent to the destruction he left behind. The damage didn't stop with the fountain. In his next attempt to correct a slight misalignment of the gate, Idris's car rolled into the edge of the driveway, leaving deep gouges in the stone path. The delicate garden lining the walkway was flattened, tulips and marigolds crushed under the tires. Even Omar, who had been playing in the courtyard, watched in horror as petals and leaves became unrecognizable smears of color. Enough! Layla finally screamed, her voice echoing off the walls. Stop! Just stop! Idris stopped, his hand on the car door, and looked at her with a mixture of amusement and curiosity. Layla, you seem passionate about your home. I admire that. Very few people care about such things these days. Passionate? Layla shouted. You're wrecking my home. You're destroying everything my family has built. A neighbor peeked through a window across the street. What's happening? Is that him? Yes, Layla said, her voice trembling with anger and fear. That's him, the millionaire who thinks he can destroy whatever he wants and call it improvement. The chaos escalated when Idris, still seeming casual, suggested moving some of the heavy marble statues from her courtyard to make room for his ideas. Layla refused outright, but he ignored her. He ordered men, who had appeared mysteriously in the street, to lift statues with cranes, cracking pedestals and chipping edges. By mid-afternoon, Layla's beautiful courtyard was a mess of broken marble, trampled flowers and splintered wood. She had tried everything, pleading, shouting, demanding, but Idris remained calm, indifferent, almost predatory in his persistence. It was clear now, this was no accident. Amina, tears streaming, confronted him directly. Why are you doing this? This is not repair, this is destruction. Idris finally looked at her with a glint of something raw, almost dangerous in his eyes. Sometimes, he said slowly, destruction is necessary to reveal the truth. And soon, Layla, you will see the truth about me, and about your own life. Truth? Layla whispered, trembling. She didn't know if she feared him, or the promise of whatever he meant by that. By the end of the day, the courtyard was unrecognizable. Layla's heart ached as she surveyed the damage. Her home, her sanctuary, was violated. Every stone, every flower, every cherished piece of her heritage seemed to bear Idris's mark. And yet, amidst the wreckage, a burning thought began to form in her mind. She would not let this man destroy her life. She would uncover the reason behind his madness. And she would reclaim what was hers, whatever it took. Little did she know the full scope of Idris al-Mansur's intentions, and the shocking truth behind this attack was far more sinister than she could imagine. The morning after the devastation, Layla felt hollow. Her courtyard, once vibrant and alive, was a landscape of destruction. Broken marble, flattened flowers, and shattered stone statues painted a picture of chaos. Her family moved in silence, cleaning what they could, but Layla's mind was elsewhere. She could not allow this to stand unchallenged. Idris al-Mansur had crossed a line, and she needed answers. The first clue came unexpectedly. While inspecting the cracked fountain, Layla noticed something etched into the marble, barely visible beneath the dust and dirt. A symbol, a crest, faint but deliberate. She traced it with her finger, curiosity sparking a dangerous determination. It was not random, it was intentional. Layla, her mother said gently, perhaps it's better to let this go. He's rich, powerful. We cannot— No, Layla interrupted, her voice firm. We cannot let this go. This is our home, our history. Someone who destroys like that, someone who leaves a mark like this, he has a reason. Her father, usually calm and measured, nodded slowly. "If you pursue this, Layla, be careful. Idris al-Mansur is not a man who tolerates interference. But if you feel this is necessary, then follow your instincts." Determined, Layla began her investigation. She started with the symbol. Consulting old records and local historians, she discovered that it was the emblem of a centuries-old family business in Amman, an empire of wealth, now partially dissolved and absorbed into new conglomerates. To her shock, Idris's name appeared repeatedly in the records, tied to a string of acquisitions and disputes over properties once belonging to families like hers. It became clear this was not random. Idris had deliberately targeted her home. But why? Determined to dig deeper, Layla reached out to neighbors who had glimpsed Idris in the street. One elderly man, Mr. Khalid, recalled seeing Idris inspecting the homes in the neighborhood weeks before the incident. "He was taking notes," Mr. Khalid said gravely. "Not about the buildings, about the families. He's meticulous, calculating." This information confirmed her fears. Idris's destruction was deliberate, strategic. But what was his endgame? Layla needed to know, and she realized she would have to get closer, carefully. Her first step was social media and online archives. Idris, despite his wealth, maintained a surprisingly public presence, interviews, articles, photographs. Among them, Layla found a photograph that made her stomach twist. Idris, smiling broadly, standing next to a young woman who bore a striking resemblance to her late aunt, someone who had mysteriously disappeared from the family decades ago. Could it be? Layla pondered. Could Idris have a personal vendetta tied to her family history? The thought was chilling, but the connection was too strong to ignore. Next, she visited a real estate office that Idris had reportedly purchased several properties through. Pretending to be a potential investor, she gathered information on his acquisitions. Contracts and disputes. Every path led to the same conclusion. Idris had systematically targeted properties with historical significance to certain families, including hers. His actions were not impulsive. They were meticulously planned, deliberate, and personal. Late one evening, Layla discovered something that shook her further. A series of emails leaked online, revealing Idris's obsessive focus on heritage homes and their owners. One message read, "Some families must understand that their history is expendable. The past must make way for progress, and progress must be mine." The words struck Layla like a physical blow. It was no longer a question of wealth or random destruction. Idris had a vendetta against families like hers, and her home had become a symbol, a target of his perverse sense of justice or dominance. With this new understanding, Layla knew she had to act carefully. She could not confront him directly, not yet. Idris was unpredictable, dangerous, and untouchable in many ways. Instead, she began documenting everything: photographs of the damage, notes on his movements, witness statements from neighbors. She even set up discreet cameras around the property, determined to gather evidence. Her investigation led her further into Idris's personal life, revealing a man obsessed with control and power. He had a reputation for destroying properties when owners resisted his plans, often under the guise of improvement or development. Some neighbors who had faced his wrath described him as charming and persuasive in person, but relentless and ruthless once his intentions were clear. Layla realized something else. This wasn't just about property. Idris was testing her, observing her reaction. He had left his mark, the symbol on the fountain, the calculated wreckage, to provoke, intimidate, and possibly manipulate her. His motives were layered, psychological as as material. One night, after long hours of research, Layla felt a flicker of fear. She realized she was dealing with a man who was not only wealthy and influential, but also cunning and dangerous. Her parents had warned her, yet the thought of backing down made her blood boil. She could not allow him to destroy her home or her family's legacy without a fight. It was during these moments of fear and determination that Layla discovered another clue. A distant cousin, living in the city, recalled a story about Idris's family history, a bitter dispute decades ago between his father and Layla's grandfather over ancestral land. The feud had been settled publicly, but rumors suggested a hidden grudge lingered. Could this be the root of his vendetta? The pieces began to fit together. Idris's attacks were not random, but a continuation of a family feud, one that had been simmering for generations. He had waited, building wealth and influence, until he could exact his revenge in a way that left a lasting mark. Layla knew that uncovering this truth was dangerous, but it also gave her power. Knowledge, she realized, was her greatest weapon. Idris had underestimated her intelligence, her resolve, and her determination to protect her home by the end of the week. Layla had compiled an extensive dossier, photographs of the destruction, historical records linking Idris to her family feud, witness statements, and documented evidence of his previous improvements that had destroyed other properties. She was ready, not to confront him blindly, but to plan a strategy, to reveal his motives, and perhaps to turn the tables. As she sat in the remnants of her courtyard staring at the wreckage, Layla whispered to herself, "You want to destroy my home, Idris? Fine, but I will uncover your secrets first, and when the truth comes out, everyone will see who the real monster is, unbeknownst." To her, Idris was aware of her investigation. The glimmer of amusement in his eyes suggested he had anticipated this move. The game was far from over, and the confrontation that awaited them would test every ounce of courage, intelligence, and willpower Layla possessed. The night before the confrontation, Layla barely slept. Her mind raced with plans, scenarios, and possible outcomes. She had gathered evidence, uncovered the roots of Idris al-Mansur's vendetta, and learned the shocking depth of his obsession with her family. Now, it was time to face him, not as a frightened woman, but as someone determined to reclaim her home and dignity. Idris, meanwhile, was not unaware of her preparations. His private security had reported her inquiries, her careful documentation, and even the discreet cameras she had placed around her property. He smiled at the thought of her investigation. It pleased him. But Idris was also a man of pride, a man who never expected to be challenged, and he relished the prospect of a direct confrontation. The meeting was arranged in neutral territory, a historic cafe in the heart of Amman, filled with the warm hum of conversation and the scent of cardamom coffee. Layla arrived first, her hands trembling slightly, but her face resolute. She carried her dossier with her, every piece of evidence a silent declaration of her resolve. Idris entered moments later, impeccably dressed, exuding the effortless confidence that had unnerved her from the start. His gaze swept the cafe, and then rested on Layla. A slow smile spread across his face. "Ah, Layla," he said, taking the seat opposite her. "I see you've come prepared." "I came to understand why you destroyed my home," Layla replied, her voice steady despite the storm of emotion within. "I have questions, and I expect honest answers." Idris leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Honest answers. Very well. B. I warn you, truth is often more complicated than it appears." "Then explain it," Layla demanded. "Why me? Why my home? What does any of this have to do with you?" For a long moment, Idris studied her, as if weighing her courage. Then he spoke, slowly, deliberately. "Do you know the story of your grandfather, Layla? The deal he made decades ago?" Layla nodded cautiously. She had heard fragments, whispers of disputes and land disagreements, but nothing concrete. "I know enough," she said. "He settled whatever disagreements he had with your family. It shouldn't matter anymore." "It should matter," Idris said quietly, almost mournfully, "because what was taken from my family was never fully returned. My father's legacy was stolen, manipulated, erased by people who had power, and your family had influence. You inherited the consequences, whether you realize it or not." "You destroyed my home because of my grandfather?" Layla asked, disbelief and fury warring in her chest. I didn't destroy your home out of spite alone, Idris admitted. I did it to awaken a truth. You live in comfort, in history, while my family's suffering was hidden from the world. I wanted you to see, Layla, to feel the impact of legacy. Only then could you understand the balance of justice, and maybe the necessity of change. Layla felt a surge of anger. So you think wrecking my home makes you right? That intimidation, destruction, and fear justify your version of justice? Idris leaned forward, his expression intense. Sometimes, to reveal the truth, you must break illusions. People forget the cost of privilege until they are forced to confront it. I am not cruel, I am decisive. You're a coward hiding behind wealth, Layla shouted, slamming the dossier onto the table. You think you can manipulate and terrify me, but it won't work. I know your motives now, and I have proof that your actions not justifiable, that your vendetta is personal and deliberate. I've documented everything. Idris's eyes flickered, a hint of surprise crossing his otherwise composed face. He leaned back, smiling faintly. Impressive. Most people crumble before me. But you are persistent. Persistence isn't enough, Layla said. I'm going to make sure the world sees the truth. Your destruction, your vendettas, they end now. My home, my family, and my legacy are not yours to control. For a tense moment, neither spoke. The cafe's background noise, the clinking of cups, the murmur of conversations, felt distant, like the world itself held its breath. Then, Idris did something unexpected. He reached across the table, placing a single delicate envelope in front of her. Open it, he said softly. Layla hesitated, her instincts screaming caution. But curiosity and the desire to understand overpowered her fear. She opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, letters, and documents revealing a side of Idris she had never imagined, evidence of his father's struggles, of betrayals and manipulations by other business families, including her own ancestors. She realized with a mix of horror and empathy that Idris's actions, while destructive and morally questionable, were fueled by a lifetime of grievances that were real, painful, and deeply personal. The veil of arrogance and cruelty she had perceived was intertwined with grief and obsession. Do you understand now? Idris asked quietly. This isn't about you personally, Layla. It's about history, about correcting a narrative that was unfair. I destroyed your home because it was a symbol, a reminder of what was taken from my family. And now, you know the truth. Layla felt a complicated storm of emotions, anger, sorrow, pity, and determination. She saw the man before her, not just as the millionaire who had wrecked her home, but as Mayoni shaped by generations of conflict and loss. Yet, understanding his pain did not excuse his actions. I understand your pain, Layla said finally. But you cannot justify what you did. History cannot be rewritten by terror and destruction. You must face consequences, and you must make amends. Idris leaned back, contemplative. For the first time he seemed vulnerable, as if confronted with the weight of his own choices. Perhaps, he murmured, perhaps you are right. The confrontation did not end in violence, nor in immediate resolution, but it set the stage for a reckoning, one where truth, justice, and morality would collide. Layla knew the final chapter was coming, the moment when the shocking truth would be revealed not just to her, but to everyone involved. She left the cafe with a renewed sense of purpose. The confrontation had clarified the stakes. Idris was dangerous, yes, but he was also human, flawed, and vulnerable. And Layla realized that exposing the truth, protecting her home, and reclaiming her family's dignity would require courage, cunning, and an unwavering commitment to justice. The following week was tense. Layla spent hours reviewing the documents Idris had given her, cross-referencing them with the evidence she had gathered. The more she studied, the clearer the story became. A story of generational betrayal, hidden greed, and a vendetta that had simmered in silence for decades. But it was also a story of human complexity, grief, obsession, and misguided attempts at justice. She decided it was time to act. Layla contacted a trusted lawyer, Mr. Fareed, and laid out everything: the damage to her property, Idris's personal vendetta, the evidence of intimidation, and the historical context. Mr. Fareed, a man who had dealt with high-profile cases before, listened intently. "Layla," he said finally, "what you have here is extraordinary. We can pursue both civil and criminal actions. But more importantly, you have leverage, evidence that can not only protect your home but expose Idris al-Mansour's manipulations and force accountability." Armed with legal counsel and a plan, Layla decided to invite Idris back to her home, not for reconciliation, but for a final revelation. She wanted him to see the consequences of his actions in full, to face not only her wrath, but the truth that could no longer be hidden. The day of reckoning arrived. Idris approached her home with his usual air of confidence, though Layla noticed a flicker of tension in his eyes. She met him at the gate, her expression calm, collected, but unyielding. "Welcome back, Idris," she said. "I hope you're ready to see the full impact of your actions." Idris raised an eyebrow. "I'm always ready, Layla. What have you prepared?" Layla gestured for him to enter. The courtyard, though still scarred, had been partially restored, carefully arranged to highlight both the destruction he caused and the resilience of her home. Broken marble was displayed alongside photographs of the damage, witness statements, and records of his prior improvements on other properties. Every piece of evidence told a story of arrogance, obsession, and moral blindness. "Do you see it?" Layla asked. "This is not just about history or legacy. This is about the lives you've disrupted, families you've terrorized. You've justified it as correction, but it is destruction, pure and deliberate." Idris studied the display silently. For the first time, he did not speak immediately. His gaze lingered on the photographs, the documents, the evidence that left no room for argument. There was no charm he could wield, no wealth to shield him. He was confronted with the tangible proof of his actions and their consequences. "You've done your homework," he said finally, his voice quieter than us. I did not expect such thoroughness." "I expected nothing less," Layla said. "This is my home, my family's legacy, and I will protect it, not with threats, but with truth. You may have wealth, influence, and power, but the truth is stronger than any of that." Then came the final revelation, the piece that shocked Idris, and would shock anyone who learned it. Layla revealed the hidden legal documents she had uncovered during her investigation, deeds, contracts, and testimonies, proving that the original family feud had been misrepresented in Idris's records. His father had indeed suffered losses, but those losses were not caused by Layla's grandfather or her family. They had been manipulated by other parties within Idris's own circle of business associates. Idris's eyes widened, disbelief flickering across his face. That is impossible," he whispered. "It is not impossible," Layla said firmly. "It is documented. Your vendetta, Idris, has been misdirected. You destroyed my home, caused fear, and disrupted lives based on a false narrative. The true story has been hidden from you all these years, and now it is exposed." A tense silence filled the courtyard. Idris, usually commanding, was quiet, as if the weight of reality pressed down upon him. For the first time, he seemed small, vulnerable, a man confronted not by wealth, but by truth. Layla continued, "You have two choices now. Admit your wrongdoing, make restitution, and allow justice to take its course, or continue down this path and face not only legal consequences, but public exposure. Your reputation, your empire, everything you've built on intimidation and manipulation, could crumble." For a long moment, Idris did not speak. Then, with a sigh that seemed to release decades of tension, he said, "You are relentless, Layla. I underestimated you. Perhaps I deserve this. Layla's eyes softened, but her resolve remained firm. Acknowledgement is only the beginning. You must repair what you can, make amends, and ensure no one else suffers as I have. In the following weeks, Idris publicly admitted to his actions, issuing formal apologies and agreeing to reparations for the destruction of Layla's home. The legal process was swift, given the overwhelming evidence. He also revealed the misrepresented history within his family records, clearing Layla's name and ending the long-standing vendetta that had fueled his destructive behavior. Though the damage to her home could not be entirely undone, Layla's efforts ensured that it was restored with care, preserving its heritage while repairing the physical scars. More importantly, her family's reputation and legacy were fully restored, and the truth of the past was made public. Idris, for his part, underwent a transformation. The confrontation and revelation humbled him, forcing him to confront the consequences of obsession and misplaced vengeance. He became less a tyrant of wealth, and more a man aware of the power of truth, responsibility, and empathy. For Layla, the ordeal was transformative. She had faced fear, destruction, and manipulation, and emerged victorious through intelligence, courage, and determination. Her home, though scarred, stood as a testament not only to her family's legacy, but to her strength. She had turned a story of destruction into a story of triumph. Sitting in her courtyard one evening, Layla reflected on everything that had happened. The jasmine bloomed once more, resilient and fragrant, a symbol of life persevering through adversity. She knew that her encounter with Idris al-Mansur had been a trial, but it had also revealed the importance of truth, vigilance, and courage in protecting what one holds dear. Her phone buzzed, a message from her lawyer confirming the final. Legal documents had been signed, and Idris's reparations were in motion. Layla smiled, a mixture of relief and quiet satisfaction. The shocking truth had been revealed, justice had been served, and her family's home, though once wrecked, had been restored, stronger and more meaningful than ever. In that moment, Layla understood a profound lesson. Wealth and power may intimidate, destruction may threaten, but truth, courage, and integrity endure. And so, the story that began with terror and chaos ended with revelation and resolution, leaving behind a legacy of resilience and the unwavering strength of a woman determined to protect her home, her family, and the truth.